What has happened to the original McGirt case? My name is Ted Hassey. I'm an attorney who practices in federal and tribal courts in the state of Oklahoma. Uh, Now that we're in 2025, it's a good time to look back and talk a little bit about how we got where we're at. And one of the things that people will bring up to me sort of out of the blue, people who are not other defense counsel, but just following the news is Jimcy McGirt, who was the original litigant in McGirt v. U.S., the Supreme Court case that resulted in the July 2020 Supreme Court decision that reclassified or returned Eastern Oklahoma to recognition of it being tribal land, that these are all tribal nations and their reservations. Of course, we've had a lot of water under the bridge over the last 5 years. A lot of things have changed since that case. I think it's worth pointing out, if it wasn't that case, it would have been another case. This just happened to be the case that made it to Supreme Court, and this was the one that they made the decision on. Well, but it is sort of interesting to pause and look what happened to that litigant. Well, Jimcy McGirt had been convicted long ago of sexually abusing children, and was going to be spending the rest of his life locked up by the state of Oklahoma. Once it was determined that there was no jurisdiction, he was then tried by the federal government. Federal government, I believe, it ended up in a plea agreement with him for like a 30-year sentence, something along those lines. But he had served his 30 years. He had already been in for so long. So Jimcy McGirt, he made it out and was released into the community. And the thing that people will sort of bring up that they hear about on the news is he got caught approaching kids in the Seminole Nation. Jimcy McGirt is a member of the Seminole Nation. That was pretty terrifying, I'm sure, for the community. And he was, in October, brought before a federal judge, and the judge ordered him to get an additional 5 years, however, only serving 6 of those in custody, for which, last I checked, the expectation was in late February of 2025, McGirt would be again released. However, I think there are conditions that are supposed to keep him out of Seminole. I don't think they want him around the area, and you could understand why. He'll have another, I believe, 4.5 years, perhaps extended supervised release. What I would offer to those that would be concerned about this specific individual being in communities is they have a number of special conditions they're putting on him: ankle monitors, GPS tracking, but most importantly, the federal probation, the U.S. probation and parole supervision that he's getting is really top-notch in terms of how thoroughly they're able to keep track of these folks. They have a ton of resources. A lot of our tax dollars go to funding these agencies. U.S. probation and parole, should be able to ensure the safety of the community once he's re-released. But certainly, as many would have expected, this individual was a hardened criminal, and he was likely to reoffend. Appears he was attempting to reoffend, and he's, at least as of the time of this recording, he's in jail and in Seminole County. He's being held there, and will not be getting out until February, and then after that, will face extremely strict supervision. that's where it's at with that original litigant. I think it's also worth pointing out there was a lot of concerns, especially in 2020, saying people were going to slip through the cracks, and perhaps there continues to be a danger that people can slip through the cracks, but at least the first litigant, the first guy, McGirt, is not going to slip through the cracks, and at least every other case that I keep hearing about where individuals need to be retried or they need to be resentenced or they've moved from facing supervision from the state to supervision from the federal government or from the tribe, it seems like law enforcement agencies and courts are working hard to make sure that those criminals are being monitored, that those folks are facing real consequences for their crimes, and the community is being kept safe. If your loved one is facing criminal charges in federal tribal courts, or if your loved one is a victim of a crime and have a perpetrator that is being charged in either of those courts and need representation for victims' rights, you can give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about any way that we could help. We can be reached at 918-932-2800. Again, my name is Ted Hassey.